So, in terms of like the types of things you will be bringing in that we will actually be doing, at least at the beginning,
Hmm.
are you thinking stuff from the book plus some other things, or like what's kind of the range of practices,
I,
etc.?
I I would say that in a way it's very similar to what we've been doing during the course. And let's say also, Kosi, what we've been doing during my first workshop, even though I didn't have a clue what I was doing back then, but it somehow worked. Um, but it's this type of practices, but we add like a meta level, again, another meta level to it. Like already when we do these courses, we have the meta level of how do you act in this space? Um, not just what do you do during the little exercise, but how do you navigate the container and how do you navigate conflict and how what do you do when you don't like something that meta suggests or that sort of thing. That's the meta level we've been working with a lot. And this adds an even higher meta level of and how do you bridge this into your life, both as a human that's humaning, but also as a how can you maybe bring this more into the world, but also again not in a way that it becomes imposing or dogmatic. So that's the layer that we're going to add. And perhaps, I don't know, but when I'm thinking out loud, perhaps the weekends are a lot about experiencing it ourselves, uh, but also with opportunities for different people to step up and create and facilitate. And then in between the weekends is maybe where we bridge it to the outer world, for example. I don't know, but
Mhm. Maybe one thought I also had is, I mean, it depends also a lot how, like, who would be there in the end. But one thing that was quite, I think that also got me curious is the comparison in a way, like where are we coming from? And I think, I don't know about you, but I imagine you also know a lot of people who went, and maybe also ourselves in part we were in spaces or went through processes. I can also speak on myself. I went through processes. I met a lot of people where the freedom or the change of the change to more self-expression does come at the expense of others or at the expense of connection. You make new connections, but potentially you feel more alienated to other friends or your family or maybe the culture that you come from or etc. You can fill in the blanks. And while there is some power in finding something where you can experience a side of yourself that previously wasn't able to be expressed, uh, getting that side only by losing another side of yourself, I think is something that isn't so great. And this level of integration, I think, is missing a lot in workshop spaces. And it's a lot about oneself. And exploring this somehow, I think, would be quite interesting. Also understanding why does this happen? Like why do people alienate from their friends, their families, and how is this sometimes even used so they're bonded more to a new idea, a new group, a new brand, a new teacher. And obviously this can go all the way to actual real abusive and culty behavior, but also in smaller forms, this exists. And I think this is a super interesting space, how to then, be more yourself while remaining in connection also to people who did not go to 100 workshops and do not speak the same language as you, or do not
yeah,
have the same tools or the same comfort in their body. Um, yeah, and
yeah,
to me, this is like also a skill to learn.
yeah, for sure. And this is exactly the kind of inquiries that fit into this program. I don't have the answer right here, right now, but it's exactly this honesty and this level of going past the bullshit or the superficial we're all happy connecting blah that I wish to have in this container. And
Mhm.
I see that, for example, very much embodied in you also, Cozy. Like the example I wanted to name earlier, which really I remembered something you said years ago, was that someone was complaining about, oh, people shouldn't be poly if they don't know how to communicate. And I love that you took the standpoint of like, no, they can be poly if they don't want to communicate. Why would this be a privilege only for the people who have learned blah blah blah? And I've seen you bring these kinds of standpoints throughout the years, and I've taken a lot of inspiration actually from that. So yes, I just want to say this is exactly the kind of thing that we want to bring.
I love that you're bringing specifically this in, because it's very alive for me right now. Having, I'm an immigrant, so I grew up in Lebanon and moved to Germany, and then I grew up in a cult, and I kind of left that cult, and so I've had a few of these really big exits in my life, and that temptation of always going, to the next thing, but then bringing all this stuff with me, right? Is big. And I just had a call yesterday with my family talking about inheritance and investing in land in Lebanon and things like that. So that's something I also care about. Um, I'd certainly be down to make it a more explicit, uh, yeah, part of the course or of our intention.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I was just in another call right now where I was sharing about how I fell into this trap of as I developed more, I was more in touch with my emotions and stating my desires and boundaries, etc. And then I've had a phase of probably up to 2 years where I was actually silently judging the people who couldn't do that so well. And I was alienating myself and I was making myself superior to them. Um, which at some point I started to realize they pick up on, like such as my flatmates, I was doing that with flatmates. And at some point I was like, oh, wow, this is the trap. I've created my own dogma. Uh, and now I tend to end my course, for example, the last chapter that we do is question your thoughts. And this is where I wish to also always bring this perspective of, hey, we should also question everything we've been doing in this course, and we should not make this now the way of living. I notice I'm saying a lot of should in this sentence, but but you get what I mean. Like, at least wanting to bring that awareness of, hey, what are you doing with that? Like, is this now what you claim to be the right way of living? And is that true?
Yeah, that's so much resonates. I'm also just laughing because like sometimes also what you said with like how naive I was. Oh my fucking God. Like the things that I did with the confidence. I'm like a part of me wants that confidence back because it lets you do things in a way. Yeah, but it is also that like it's humbling and um yeah, to go through that process and it like it's so insane how much more I can connect to regular people now and I can talk about their kids and their jobs and their car and their vacation without complete judgment on my side that they're like too normal. And I'm like, you have a life and there's interesting things about you and maybe we're not the most compatible in how we live, but I can connect to you as a human, and that's a huge relief for me because I was, yeah, I can so relate. I put myself on this like I'm such a rebel pedestal so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there's so much to it. Like there's a lot more to it than just that also. Like there's reasons why I have less access to certain infrastructures in our culture and society in the way they live, and that's not so visible to other people. Um, yeah, anyways, but yeah, it's nice
And
to
there's also actually a wisdom and a beauty sometimes in what I might have judged as a simple life or a default, but there can be such a level of profoundness in it. Also, I now I'm living with a kid again, with a family, and it's yeah, the cooking and the routines, and there's also a different kind of beauty in it.
yeah.